Those of you who know the distances and places in Mumbai can only imagine this hard efforts. So this was really hard journey for him firstly. And why this? Because he used to get just 500 rupees per month, and he had to manage everything, his living, traveling, everything. So now answering your question, what I really feel, Madhavi, that of course, Bharat Muni has written everything about Natya firstly, then Nritya, as Nritya was later incorporated in Tripuradaha and Amrit Manthan Natyas. And then, of course, about vocal music and instrumental music. So he has written everything about Natya and Nritya, which is Abhinay, Vritti, Pravritti, Sthanak, Angahar, Chari, Karan, and Hastamudra, Padabhet, everything which is from, you can say, top to toe. And all the norms and the rules and the uses of body, everything is written in Natya Shastra. So what I really feel that it is where there is an element of a story, there is Natya Shastra in it. Because as you said, all the rasa and bhav are important aspect of the theme of a story. Rasa and bhav all the time go hand in hand. Where there is a rasa, there is bhav. So ultimate aim of any presentation is either, not either, rasa nishpatti, rasa siddhanta, and rasa nishpatti. So these elements of sentiment and emotions are unavoidable aspects of the natya and even cinema presentation. What I would say that cinema is an expansion of natya. There are limits for natya presentation, but in cinema, it is with the help of photography, video, and now the modern techniques. Everything you can see, you don't have to imagine. So in cinema, you don't have to have subtle movements or suggestive movements like like it is a gist of drama presentation. So where while presenting drama as written in Natya Shastra, also that one has to be very alert, precise, perfect, and powerful, because there is no again in presentation. Once you present it, it's done. There and then you get the applause of the audience. But in cinema, it is not that. It is, you have ample time to have retakes till you as an actor or your director is satisfied, right? So I don't think that it is, this cinema is based on Natya Shastra, but I would say it the either way. Natya Shastra elements we can see very powerfully in this movie, right? So in every song and even dialogue delivery, it is, we can have that impact of rasa and bhav. So which is very rare, because to give it all the time throughout is a different task, right? So the this movie was the first movie made in Eastman color, the first movie in Eastman color. Then it has very good story, very good lyrics, very good dialogues, uh, apt music direction by Vasant Desai ji. Then, because he has used so many different ragas, uncommon ragas and common ragas so aptly that the theme is getting highlighted every time with the music direction also. It has then the impressive dances and dance direction, then V. Shantaramji's dance direction in total, and attractive locations and effective cinematography. So everything has come together. You know, the style of acting, when we see this movie, we saw it right now, but when that time again, we feel that it is very different way of enacting. But once you understand that that was made in 1955, then everything gets wiped. So you know what I mean to say. You know, it is very, sometimes very dramatic, sometimes very loud, and we don't expect it in nowadays time, right? So, but we can definitely say that Kathak, you can see Kathak's impact in all majority of the songs where there is a classical touch. As Gopiji trained in Kathak dance under his grandfather, Pandit Sukhdev Maharaj, it was obvious to have Kathak impact in this film. Um, for your surprise, let me tell you that the character of Mangal Maharaj in this movie, the Guru, is exactly mirror image of Pandit Sukhdev Maharaj. Firstly, Nana Sahib Palshikar, who was Mangal Maharaj in this film, he was sitting next to Sukhdev Maharaj's portrait. And then Baba Vardam, as a makeup person, he made his makeup and everything, his outfits, his beard, and everything was made exactly like Sukhdev Maharaj. So this was one of the main thing I remembered just now. So what I think that we can see the clear difference between having someone else play this character of a dancer and having a Kathak dancer in actual doing this role. So we can see. Can do you want me to talk by this scene, not scene, but particular couple of songs in particular?
I think if maybe if you could share about one of the songs, that would be great for us. And it'll help us transition sort of into thinking about like
Oh,
comparisons of modern.
no, are you talking about the videos?
No, just this music or the video,
Yes.
whichever. Yeah.
No, I'm not prepared for that because we all saw the movie right now. So I was expecting all of you to have watched this movie right now. So, okay, anyways, but I can explain. Don't worry. You will get the scene in front of your eyes, I'm sure. So, the first scene, you know, we see that it's a jugalbandi when Mangal Maharaj wants to show Sandhya what real dance is. It's a jugalbandi of tabla and gopiji, tabla and girdhar. So it is. You can see very intricate rhythm patterns in that. It's just a footwork jugalbandi. And Chaube Maharaj, Gopiji's Mamaji, is playing tabla for that scene, and as a tabla artist there. And we can see the clarity of footwork, the speed and intricate rhythm patterns in this scene. Immediately later on, we see that very unique movements which we had never seen before. It is in a huge hall. Gopiji starting from one corner and sliding down to other corner and ending it right on the sum. So this was very unique and very attractive in those days. Nowadays also no one does that, but Gopiji kept on doing it even on the stage. For Gatabhav, he used to do that. It is in Gatabhav, we say kat dhak din ta din ta kat dhak din ta din ta kat, and then the nikas is kat dhan dikita dhatu nakat, and then he used to slide down kat dhan dikita dhatu nakat, and then end it on the sum with banging his right foot. So it was very impressive. And the in Naman Toda, again, it is, we can see that it is a long shot. there are hardly any cuts in between. So it must have been very difficult, but still, you have to. Oh, I'm wondering you have not seen the film right now. It is. You
Yeah.
have seen it, right? Right. Okay. Fine. Fine. Sorry. Then you can imagine. You can see the spins he took around the pillars. With such swift and graceful movement, and it is. I have no words to explain that, because there is no, while having spins around the pillars, there is no change in his speed. And it is one shot scene.
Yeah.
When he has started from our right corner and then completes it, then only the scene gets complete.
Manisha ji, I think
So
that
let me tell you about.
Oh no, I was just going to say, I think this background
Yes.
is really useful, because when you talk about these longer shots and the fact that they have to do it all in one take, because back then, of course, you cannot waste the film reel. Today, of course, you can kind of cut and you can do things like that. So
Yeah.
go ahead.
But for V. Shantaram, it wasn't like that. He was never ever worried about the film wastage and all. He was a royal person, he wanted just the perfection. But for the speed and for the energy, it is again very difficult to break it in between and then show other two pillars, again break it, then show two other pillars, then this impact would not have been there.
Right,
So
right.
it had to be one, yes.
Yeah, no, and I think what's interesting is when you think about today, um, filming, choreographing for dance for film and things like that, I think is very different. And I think this is a great sort of lead into Nirati and Sheila, who are sort of contemporary practitioners and educators of Bollywood dance. And so I wanted to ask both of you if you could maybe speak to the influence of Kathak and other dances that are considered classical on Bollywood, and how that operates in today's landscape.
Hi, thank you for having us here. Sheila, I'm going to go first if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so growing up watching movies, being born in 1980 in this country, I first watched that only classical dance was appropriate on screen. From what I saw, I used to watch Kamal Hassan and Sagar Sangam, and then my parents would turn on all these black and white movies, including the one we just saw that was in color. And for the longest time, the influence in our home because of those films was it's appropriate for you as a girl. I grew up with two older sisters. My three daughters, my dad would say, you're allowed to go do classical on stage because this is what we see. But the minute you see like a little bit of shaking on the screen, I think it was a little bit of a culture shock to my parents every time they saw the movie screen moving from classical dance, Kathak and Kuchipudi and Bharatanatyam, and semi-classical forms, and then suddenly folk dancing. That was okay. You can go do a fisherman dance. You're allowed to do that. But then suddenly, like when my sister turned 13 in 1989 and Madhuri Dixit came out with Ek Do Teen, she was not allowed to choreograph and do that song on stage. That was a no-no in our house. But of course, by the time I grew up, things changed, and I get to run my own Bollywood school. Things change with each kid, each generation. The way Bollywood's evolved from classical to folk to this film genre is incredibly impressive, but we still go back to our roots. When we teach a Bollywood move, it derives completely from Kathak and completely from Bharatanatyam and classical. Our expressions, what Manisha ji was just saying about how it's all about the rasa and the bob and the emotion, and it was almost, the 1955 film there, they seemed so dramatic, but I think that's what people needed back then. They needed to just watch that. And people do still act like that. They just act like it at home and don't show us, but we should express those. We should, half the time that girl, that heroine just looked nauseous, but maybe that's how people really feel. And she was able to get that out in classical dance. But I'm just rambling on about the evolution, but I'm going to let Sheila continue from here.
Yeah, and I think one point off of that is Nirthi and I have has had a lot of exposure in schools, preschools, elementary, even Sidwell, where the Obama kids went, we teach their after school program. And, the thing I always, whenever we do a presentation, we always say, what really stands out about Indian dance, whether it's Kathak, South Indian, it's your expression. Because ballerina is similar to Kathak. I don't know, Manisha ji, I hope, I love learning from Manisha ji, but, they stand very similar, right? In Kathak, we stand straight, our legs are straight in a V. And when we spin, they may spin on their toes, but they have the same strong abs in the form. But what differentiates us is the facials. That compared to any dance in the world, I think that's what it's all abhinay, right? Like that's really the differentiating factor. Even when you watch a lot of like Latin music has taken influences from Indian dance, but they always love the way your face moves and how you reflect that. And I think that's huge. And that's what, even in America, that's what people love. But just kind of also expanding on Nirthi's, growing up here, being born here. So my father is actually Maharashtrian. So, Kathak was totally acceptable because, Madhuri Dixit, and, we have Manisha ji, and so many Maharashtrians are, mastered Kathak and really taken it to a different level. But my mom is actually Punjabi, but born and raised in Afghanistan. For 400 years, her family has been. And their only point of reference being there for 400 years, and Nirthi, I think this is going to happen to our kids, right? You kind of lose the authenticity and value. So their only frame of reference was really Bollywood movies. And a lot of, my mom said Raj Kapoor stayed at her house because he was there filming, in Hema Malini. Like she remembers being a little kid and being a teenager and seeing them, at her uncle's house or here because they stayed with people of Punjabi descent over there. But, that was their only frame of reference. And so, and as much as classical dance should stay close to its roots, this is in some ways, it's a way to communicate and keep the art strong, especially when you're places like Afghanistan growing up, even though Afghanistan back then was very modern. Obviously they allowed the movies, but that was a huge frame of reference for my mom's family. So just adding in a different perspective there.
Well, and it's really useful that you brought up sort of the idea of abhinaya and how that's sort of like a binding factor that differentiates Indian dances from the world, and also kind of brings the country together in terms of like the different types of dance forms. But of course there are regional differences, right? Like we just saw a Hindi film, but we have all the regional film industries in India, and it's interesting the ways in which they incorporate the music and dance practices of those specific regions. So I was actually going to ask Manisha ji maybe to start speaking about sort of the integration of classical and regional dance and music and art in Marathi cinema.
Sure. Madhavi, I would like to tell you, as Nirathi and Sheila said about the expressions and folk elements, and as Nirathi was allowed to go for folk dance, but I must not forget to tell you a particular song in this movie, Jhanak Jhanak Payal Baaje, which had everything in it. There are actually two songs which had incorporated classical and folk together. And the first is Murali Manohara Krishna Kanhaiya. So this is totally like a dance drama. So it is, Gopiji is in full get-up of Shri Krishna, and whereas Sandhya and other dancers, they are in Radha and Gopi's traditional costumes. And it says, the song is, as you said, I have to talk about music also. For my surprise, half of the song is based on Kavit, as it is always used in Kathak. Kavit is a rhythmic poetry, which is sung prose, not sung, delivered in prose. So the half, 2 minutes and 15 seconds, we have just this kavit and enacting on that kavit. So, and the other element of Kathak is so strongly used in this kavit or this song is wherever Krishna comes with his force and mischievous acting, then they have used the words of, the syllables of Paran. So it is like dhan nadi kita kita tan nadi kita kita de tadan nadha, or even tirkitak takitak dingardha takitak dingardha. So all these syllables from Pakhavaj are used for male. And where Sandhya enters as Radha, it is the chum chananana tachum tat tigda digdikta. All these syllables are of todas, we call it. So they are used for a female grace, and like tina 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 tina, or chum chum chananana. So all, this also highlights the poetry or the music, and then it gives height to the dance also. So here we can see Gopiji. Gopiji's mischievous, uh, or he exactly embodies Shri Krishna. So not only with his, just with his energy, but mischievous and playful expressions. And what is mostly remembered is energetic movements, jumps and leaps. If you have noticed, there are Krishna's movements are like full of jumps and leaps with his joyful attitude. Yes, and effortless landing on the floor. That is very important. Because you even in fraction of seconds he's down on the floor with different poses. So and swift spins. So these are highlighting points of this particular song. As I said, that there has to be influence of some classical dance, and then only you get this product, this type of production. So, and even we cannot forget here also, at the when other dancers come, Gopiji had used some folk steps to sum up with to end this song. And even the last song, where that Bharat Nataraj Utsav's presentation, it is again a long shot, which is very difficult for dancer to deliver, but very joyous for the audience, as they can have the feel of performance. So where there are no cuts in between. And Gopiji was well known for his Tandav. And this whole piece is based on Tandav. So we can see his cartwheels, backbending, jumping, leaping, coming down on the floor with such great energy. And we can see even the use of the group, the choreography, and he has used the group with thoughtful property, and the they flow seamlessly on the floor. Sometimes you might have seen, it is like we call a lamp, and they all look like lamp. So it is very important for me to look like what you want to show. It is not, it has to be the choreographer's imagination, which is conveyed properly. And this is the success of the dance direction here in this film, that you get to understand each and everything. There is no why, how. Every time, in as you say, in dance, you have to ask couple of questions, that whether this is a necessity of the story, or you want to take story forward with this particular song, or this song is just for an entertainment. So once you get a precise answer of these questions, then only you can look at the choreography through different angles. So going back to your answer, Madhavi, about the regional films, as you said, in Marathi, there is no such film like Jhanak Payal Baaje, which is totally based on classical dance, any form of classical dance. I would say no. There are many, not many, but at least 12 to 15 movies where we can see at least a 3 minute classical song. One is Nivudunga, and there is a Thumri. I have choreographed one ठुमरी in तारुण्याच्या लाटेवर. Sharvari Jamenis has choreographed one tarana in Samudra, I believe. So there are, you can count it on fingertips. It is so very, because we in Maharashtra, all the films, majority of the films are based on rural activities and stories. And so they have to have Launi, which is a strong and plus point of our Maharashtra. So you get to watch right from olden days to modern days. We can see the difference and the influences of other dance forms, but not classical, in Launi too. Because they say Launi and Kathak went hand in hand in Peshwa's days, because there were some teachers and who used to teach classical to these Launi dancers. So there are some similarities, of course, but they are not perfect or precise, I should say. But you can see just a few aspects of
So
Kathak in
Manisha
that.
G, which one came first? Was it the folk that came first or the classical? I always get
Of
like
course,
confused.
folk.
I thought,
No,
yeah.
Folk, 100% folk. Everything has started right from folk. When man never used to talk, he used to enact everything.
Yeah.
And he used to dance around the fire with
Mhm.
extempore footsteps and jumping and shouting. And that was the origin of any dance, firstly.
And I think folk is something that every region in India has, and that sort of gives the flavor of that particular region more so than I think classical
True.
arts would.
True.
And so actually I'm curious to know then from, given this background from Sheila Nirthi, since we're talking about regional music when we've brought up folk, I'm curious to know, do you mostly use Hindi film music, or do you work with these other forms of regional and folk music? How do you pick songs when you teach in this Indian American context?
That's
Yeah,
it's actually a really good question. I feel like in that sense, I'm glad I'm South Indian and Sheila hails from this Maharashtrian and Punjabi background, because we work well together. And I think this is the first time in in my life, like in the last 5 years, I've seen the South Indian Tollywood, Mollywood, Collywood, all the woods kind of come into a broader mainstream. And I'm really happy about that. Like every time, I don't care how mainstream the song is. And it's like Jimmy Kikamo from Malayalam. Like, I'm just so happy it's there. And then, and Sheila will just come up to me because she has some Telugu wedding clients, and she'll be like, hey, can we do Vachinde, the song? And I'm like, whoa, did you just say Vachinde from your Punjabi mouth? Like, how did you do? So I'm just happy film is becoming more global. And one thing in Indian film was it was always really compartmentalized. And now finally the Indian film industry is becoming more global. And you see North Indians singing Tamil songs, and you see South Indians, especially Tamilians singing Punjabi songs. I mean, we live in a place where everything's supposed to be a melting pot, but now I'm seeing it more in India. Within India, people are just knowing more about each other, and that makes me really happy. And I'm loving the influence of all of us on each other and the film industry helping that.
And I love how, classical dance, there's always been a stark difference between North Indians, even in the costumes. By the way, this movie had fantastic costumes. Nirthi and I were just texting each other. We're like, we should get this kind of costume. I mean, it just from the 50s, we want to bring it back. But yeah, movies like Bollywood movies like Two States, which brought to light, okay, the differences. I loved that. And Nirthi and I actually, we took it to another level, Madhavi. You were saying, oh, in America, how do you deal with the two regions? And like at my wedding, her famous skit that she sings as well is she sang, she did a voiceover to a Justin Bieber a classical Justin Bieber mix. So they took a Justin Bieber song and made it a classical form. And she did, hey, I'm from the North. Hey, I'm from the South. And we had like a dance off, with her and her kuchipudi steps and me and my Kathak steps. And it just, there was such stark differences. And we use that skit even to Americans because they can even see it's so different, even though they think, oh, India, costumes, bright colors, expressive, but they can still see the movements, the stance, everything. So yeah.
And then you asked how we pick our songs. We used to pick just the latest and greatest Bollywood hits because that's what all our clients wanted. And then I remember this email went out from one client, like a Punjabi client, was like, why are you teaching a Telugu song for 6 weeks? We signed up for a Bollywood class. And I was like, whoa, I didn't know that kind of statement even existed anymore. So it was one client out of many, many. So we just said, we're going to continue to learn this for 6 weeks. She's like, yeah, but my daughter doesn't understand what this means. I'm like, your daughter doesn't understand any of it anyway. So, I mean, we're here for the music and the beats. I'm translating the whole thing, but picking music, you have to be careful. It really depends on your clients, Madhavi, because we deal with two kinds of clients in our area, in your area, where we all live in America. We deal with the people that have grown up here like us, and we deal with the people that have just come from India. So there's a difference in their needs for music. We've noticed that. And then sometimes we'll do a remix by one of our favorite DJs who will put in, a song that's not appropriate sometimes. So how do we navigate around language now? I just brought this up with my 14-year-old yesterday. The TikTok dances she dances to have inappropriate language, but she's like, Mom, lyrics don't matter anymore. And I'm like, why not? She's like, because we are growing up in a society, she said this to me, she's 14, where we're learning to respect each other, past the limits of lyrics and what we wear and what we do. And a child psychologist, she's my friend, I was talking to her earlier, she said, lyrics and songs are different from how you treat a person in a personal relationship. So as long as people know boundaries, your daughters are okay, because I think I had a moment of crisis. Like, why are we listening to this in the car going, the whole time? So there's a lot, actually. That's a loaded question. How do we choose songs now? Are we doing it age appropriate? Are we doing beat appropriate? Are we picking it regionally based on the population of the class? I don't know. Every semester is different. You just have to roll with the tide.
I just want to add Neerati's questions and confusions probably. See, you may want to try just the music, as you said, that they don't understand the language. Even when I see in all these Sangeets, when they do Bollywood, they have nothing to do with the lyric and the meaning and the theme of it. They just use the rhythm and the music. So why can't we do this? That just like karaoke, you have everything in it and you don't have the lyrics. Have you ever tried that? Or you may want to try that, because as it is, you don't give those expressions of that particular theme, right? They don't understand the meaning, or even they don't want to be so loud in a way from their point of view. Then can one try this? That just dance or just choreograph, just teach them Bollywood to dance on Bollywood music. Because I understand for you people, for they who love Bollywood, it is very difficult to get that type of music. For us, it is not difficult because we are groomed in that. We write our lyrics, or we get our lyrics written. We choose different musicians in the world. Then we get our lyrics music, get it with proper music. Then we select or decide the musicians. Then we go to the studio, do rehearsals, and then our music is ready. So we take hard efforts for that. I know when to watch a Bollywood, everything is ready. You have music ready. You have up to some extent the dance ready to give you some ideas. As you said, you get some ideas of regional flavors also. So I think once you should try this and send me the video, because I'm so eager to see a dance that energetic, that joyous, and with a lot of variety of movements, but without using any words in it, just on the music. Please do that for me and send it to me.
Instrumentals. You should send her what we did a few years ago.
Yeah, we'll send her some of our creations from the instrumentals. That's a great idea. We've talked about just creating our own music too, like whether it's lyricless or just having an instrumental. Sometimes we've those ideas have come to us, but the way you just described the way you get to have all this access to making your own music, it just, the whole process just fascinates us. I'm sure we have access to that through the Bollywood network here, and we should try a little bit harder. So thank you for the advice, Manisha ji.
But one of the things I'm thinking is if lyrics don't matter at all, I notice, and you probably are aware of this too, especially Nirati with your
Well,
background.
are we going to agree with the 14-year-old? Are we all going to agree that the lyrics don't matter? Because I think they still matter to some of us.
Well, if you're doing facials and abhinay, where do you get your,
Madhavi, go ahead.
What I'm trying to get at is that a lot of, at least in Telugu songs, a lot of times they have like the song will be going in Telugu and then there'll be like a Hindi phrase and then it'll keep going in Telugu and there'll be an English phrase. So it's kind of that like seems to be the pattern overwhelmingly so these days, at least in Telugu songs. I don't know what the situation is with other regional cinemas. So that was something that I was thinking about when you were saying that lyrics don't matter. Now, something I do wonder with sort of the integration of different languages and perhaps, in a Telugu movie, they may have like a different region of India's dance in that song, even though the song is in Telugu. Similarly, with Hindi cinema, we see this all the time. Different regions of India, their dances are being shown in Bollywood. And what's interesting about that is I wonder, does the cultural context of that regional dance style or song style get lost when it's integrated into Bollywood? So in other words, is Bollywood appropriating these regional songs?
Well, you can look at a song like Lungi Dance and, I think a lot of Tamilians were offended by it, but a lot of Tamilians loved it. And, it became a thing. And there's a lot of parodies of it, of Tamilians re-singing it about Amitabh, that he's like, parodies and stuff. I don't know. I'm not offended. I like the Lungi Dance. But people might feel differently. What do you feel? You're a South Indian. How do you feel about the Lungi Dance, Madhavi?
I don't know. One of the things that I feel like is hard for me is because I'm like in academia in this field, sort of studying appropriation and this, I have completely lost my sense of like what I feel because I'm so like, what does it say in the literature? So I think that's what has ended up happening to me.
And when are people supposed to apologize? Like there's always this, I'm sorry. The Apu from The Simpsons, remember him? Yes. His voice guy apologized today. I wish I could say sorry to every Indian, but all the Indian people that grew up with The Simpsons are like, why? We loved you, Apu. Like, don't apologize. Yes, Hank Azaria. Thank you, Karen. Well, when do you apologize? And you're in this field of like studying appropriation. So
well, we should also talk about how Bollywood has like Biju Marajji, Manisha ji. He's like second generation, who's like Jhanak and Jhanak. Well, the movie we just saw, he's brought that same flavor to modern movies too. So we shouldn't negate that, right? That's also still alive. I mean, I don't agree with Deepika dance. Like she wasn't a traditional Kathak. I don't know how much training she did, and the cinematography going in and out. She didn't do it in one shot, like you were saying. That was obvious, but at least that the passion was there, right? And authenticity.
Yes. So it is obvious if classical dancer choreographs the things, it comes out very differently. So as you mentioned, Birju Maharaj ji, it is you can see this in Kahe Chhed in Devdas. You can even see this in Gharam Ore Paradis Siya in Kalank. And Mai Radha Teri in Vishwarupam, Jagave Sari Rehna and Hamari Atariya Pen Dede Ishkiya, and Mohe Ranga Do Lal, as you mentioned, Deepika. But it is obvious that if the heroines are trained in classical, then you get a different flavor, and which is remarkable. You don't have to have, you immediately notice it, you see. So even the choreographers and even the dancers, if they are trained in classical, then you get to know that, you get to understand that, and then you get to see even the group moving in different manner. So because as nowadays popular choreographies, we see that they have highly energetic movements, then athletics based movements, and then movements that they don't have particular meaning of that particular song. They don't they don't carry forward the meaning, and they just focus into a, a compact, though large, visually
Mhm.
aspects, and then their individual skills are not shown there, but just the total impact is, it is all the time. It must be a want of the producer, maybe, to zap the audience with this group, larger group, which, maybe they want to emphasize the audience with the such scenes which are larger than the life, probably, and to just to make them zapped with such huge dancers in one scene, which is actually not required. But still, I would say that nowadays it is, everything is recorded in HD format and made especially for larger screens. So this must be the want of the presentation. So we cannot ignore that, though. But I actually don't like the the athletics based movements when there is a lyric at the background. If it is just the music, then choreographer and dancers are free to do whatever they want to do. But if it is a good lyric and good music, and then you are doing nothing, see, then I cannot even watch that. So, what
Very
you say? What you say, Sheila?
Yeah, yeah, I agree. The lyrics is all about the expression and the mood that you're bringing out. I agree.
Sheila
Yeah,
had a big
and
problem with Mohe Rangdolal. Like she was trying to leave the
yeah,
theater.
I
yeah,
was so,
yeah.
I just didn't appreciate I guess to me, the clear lack of training. I would never say that. I think Alia Bhatt did a great job in Madhuri Dixit, and you could tell. I guess that you're right. You can just
Yeah.
see something.
Definitely. Well, I had for Prakriti, I'm a member of Prakriti Dance, and Prakriti Dance's Festival of Kuchipudi that happened earlier this year. As a part of that, I got to interview a, a a dance cinematographer, Mr. Suresh from Hyderabad, and he was talking about the differences between as a dance cinematographer filming a trained dancer versus a non-trained dancer. And so that was a really insightful conversation. Of course, nowadays, like Manisha ji said, because of the sort of grand cinematic effect that you're trying to create, there are more cuts in the way dance is shot anyways. But one of the things he was saying was that when you have a trained dancer, all you have to do is you just set up the camera, you tell them basically the dimensions, and they will work and they'll create their magic within those dimensions. Whereas if someone is not a trained dancer, then you have to do a lot of cuts. A lot of times they don't end their movements on some. You have to, in editing, you have to do slow motion in order for it to reach some. So things like that have become the complications. And of course, when you're trying to create impact, like Manisha ji said, with the set and the lights and the athletic movements, it's quite a tedious affair.
Costumes,
And
costumes.
absolutely, absolutely. And so I think, if you talk about a song like Mohiran Dolal, I think that must have been, given sort of where Deepika is in terms of training, those must have been considerations of cutting, and even though it was sort of a slower song. Yeah.
Even in Pakiza, Meena Kumari ji had not danced. Padma Khanna has dubbed it for her.
He's like a stunt
Because all,
devil, like a Kathak
is,
double.
yes, 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 because it was not possible for Meena Kumari ji to dance with that perfection and that speed, and then Padma Khanna did it for her, even dancing on that glass pieces and everything, all
Wow.
the
Right.
just the close shots of feet are there. That is all of Padma Didi.
Do people take it offensively? Sorry, Malvi. If like you mix Kathak and Bharatanatyam or Kathak and Kuchipudi, because a lot of the Bollywood movies will like mix the two with the intent of showing classical, not with the intent of immersing it into a Bollywood song. So I don't know how, I don't get offended by it, but I don't know if people, other South Indian dancers, classically trained dancers do.
I think I know a lot of people who do get offended, but one of the things I think that is in the back of people's minds, especially people sort of in classical dance settings, is that there's this view that Bollywood is sort of less of a dance style than Bharatanatyam, then Kathak, then Kuchipudi, then all of the styles that are deemed classical. This idea that Bollywood is less. And so that's actually a really interesting point that I'd love to hear your opinions on and your experiences with. Because I think that's what drives their dissatisfaction with the combination of Kathak and Bharatanatyam or whatever combination, is that in the head it's like, well, this is Bollywood, it's not either of these. And so then that sort of brings it down.
I don't know if my point is correct, but what I really want to say is there has to be some reflection of classical dance on Bollywood movies, songs, because India is highly enriched with 9 classical dance forms. Nowadays, Satriya and Chau also are called classical dance forms. So there is no step that it is not from classical. Everything is included in classical. So to get offended, instead of getting offended, I would say that they are using all these steps which are highly proven in respective classical dance forms are used here. The question is how they are used and why they are used and where they are used. If choreographer has that knowledge, then everything is smooth and fine. But, and I don't want any of the classical song, any of the Bollywood song is called that it is Bollywood Kathak or it is Bollywood Bharatanatyam. Right from Apalam Chapalam or Amrapali or Shankara Bharanam, we see a combination of Bharatanatyam, Kathak, folk in those dances also. It can be pure Bharatanatyam with Vaijanti Malaji and Padmini Ragini. What they did, even Manju Bhargavi, Meenakshi, Sheshadri, Damini, they have all mixed the different styles together. And then that is the want of this large screen, I believe. It is not wrong, but don't call it Bollywood Kathak or don't call it Bollywood Bharatanatyam. It is Bollywood. They are different parts and everything is fine and good in their own places. Just don't name them. This is what I seriously feel.
Because that's why the term semi-classical is there, right? You're really safe with that term.
Yes.
I know all the safety terms if anyone ever needs them.
But even semi-classical is not enough for Bollywood because semi-classical doesn't incorporate athletics movements. It can incorporate folk movements, but not athletics movements.
When do you guys think Bollywood became criticized for semi-classical? Because if you look at some of Gopiji's work in Umrajan and Nacha Mayuri, which was actually a Telugu movie dubbed, and then he remade it in Hindi, and you can see the difference in styles from Telugu Mayuri to Hindi Mayuri. But that was appropriate. All those days were appropriate. When did they start getting criticized? Was it from the beginning, from true pundits, from true people that felt?
See, actually,
criticism's always going to be there.
Yeah.
It is up to an individual, I think, because whatever was shown in the films, it was highly appreciated by the masses. This is very truly, we can say this. Even Lachu Maharajji has choreographed in Mohe Panagatape Nandalala, Mughal Azam. Then we can see, as you mentioned, Gopiji. I mentioned Lachu Maharajji. Then Sohanlal Masterji, Sudarshan Dhi, Krishna Kumar, even Saroj Khan, they are highly trained. No one criticizes or no one wants to name it the Bollywood movies at semi-classical or classical or My point is when you perform it on the stage, then don't call it Bollywood Kathak. Just call it Bollywood, because you it is up to an individual. If I don't like, I may not see it. I may not. Who is going to listen to my criticism? If I say I did not like Mohe Ranga Do Lal, okay, it's your choice. But the masses, they have loved it. They have loved Gharamore Paradesiya. And I can say that the Chaumukhi Chakkar, which I have introduced to Kathak field, it is used there, and even not in perfect form. Then I just get like Dhanna Takita Dinta mood. But but it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. Manisha Sakhe did not like that particular moment. Okay, who cares? It is up to me only. So this is very tricky
It's
to
tricky. And at the end
know.
of the day, when you say masses appreciate it, we should be happy that the dance has been brought into light and those masses have been educated. And maybe they'll look deeper into Kathak after they saw that one checker.
Well, that's why
and
most of
stuff.
our students come. It's a little kid that says, "Oh, I saw this movie and now I want to know more about Kathak, and I want to dance like Madhuri Dixit, or I want to dance like Alia Bhatt, or
So when your students come in, do they come in sort of more thinking, having Bollywood in their head rather than sort of pure Kathak or pure Bharati?
There's two. So I teach pure Kathak at the school, and Nirthi teaches Bollywood mostly. And so they come in with both. A lot of them take both, and I know a lot of gurus don't agree with learning multiple dance forms, and it will mess up, your form, etc. But at this point, especially when they're so young, you just want to keep them interested and grasp their interest. I think that's a huge struggle in America. Is oh, we have SATs, we have to go to Harvard, we need to like focus on the diving and swim and things that will get me into those schools. And we lose a lot of our student base in Nirthi, right, based on those priorities. So for us, it's been just how do we keep them interested? And yeah, and usually Madhavi, though, they come in separate. Like they'll be like, Kathak is too much focusing, like too disciplined, and they'll go to Bollywood. Or a lot of kids want to do both. It just depends on the
But
personality.
sometimes they'll hear what's going on next door. We teach in studios next to each other, and one kid will just sit and she will be dragged in right away. She'll just watch the thing and she's like, Mom, I want to do that. Like, it's really interesting how some 7-year-olds just know that's for them. It's like, it's nice when they choose it themselves and nobody asks them to.
I'm always interested in this because you have kids who sort of, when they're little, they immediately want to start dancing. For me, I started Bharatanatyam when I was 4, and I don't think I ever remember being like a dancey sort of kid. I was just put in it. And then of course I've grown to love it and have continued it over my lifetime. So it's always interesting to hear stories like you said, at the 7-year-old, they hear the class and they're like, this is what I want to do. Very
I had a mom that said she was forced to do it in India, and she's like, I didn't like my guru. And now that her daughter is doing it, she's so like warm in the heart, because she said, oh, it's so nice that my daughter wants to do it and
Wants to do that, yes.
She's so good. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
But I don't know in India how it was traditionally. You just got put into it too, right, Manisha ji?
I followed my parents' order. They wanted me to dance, and they wanted me to learn Kathak, and they wanted me to take dance as a career. There is a huge, big story behind it. We can talk on it a little later, because it was one of the treatments for my health. And so they saw me dancing on the songs on the radio, and then they thought that this is in her, and then they put me to Kathak. But of course, I loved each and every moment of my learning Kathak and teaching and dancing, performing, choreographing, everything. And as you said, Kathak, any classical dance, has to have a lot of patience, and you have to have faith in your art, firstly, and in your guru, secondly. And it is again up to the guru how he convinces the student that how important to learn classical dance form is to do any style of dance in the world. Once you know any classical dance form, there is it is you have no limits for any other style, because you can immediately grab the style once you are very well trained in classical dance forms. This is my faith is, and I have experienced it. I have danced Turkish rain dance also with those boys with fast footsteps. But because I know how to do Kathak, I know how to shift my weight, I know how to keep up with the speed. So it is not difficult for any classical dancer to learn or to be in other world dance styles. So once you have that faith, then the road is clear. Then you have endless path then.
I think that's a really important note to sort of wrap up on. I know we're running out of time. That dance is a very important activity, skill, whatever you want to call it, discipline to have, and we're all really, really lucky to have it. I just want to make sure that there are no questions in the Q&A, and it doesn't look like it. Okay, so I guess just as a parting note, I'd love if we could each sort of talk about, given that this panel is about the influence of classical dance on Bollywood, where do we see this influence going forward as films continue and as the art itself evolves? Because I think, Manisha ji, you talked about sort of the athleticism. I think we even see that in the sort of purely classical world too. I know in Bharatanatyam, there are a lot of discussions about the ways in which Bharatanatyam has become sort of more athletic as the years have gone on, and we see that translate into film. So I'd love your thoughts on that.
Thank you, Madhavi. But I think we have covered everything now, and I don't think any point we have yet to discuss. So I think I said rain dance when I was insisting about my footwork. It was river dance. It was by mistake I said rain dance. It was river dance. So I was wondering what rain dance, and then I recollected it.
I did picture you
Yes.
doing Kathak in the rain for a second. It was a very beautiful scene, I imagined.
Nice. So nice. So good. But yes, so I think we have talked, we have covered everything now.
Good. Nirthi or Sheila, did you have any sort of final thoughts? And I also want to, if you're in the audience and you have a question, please do put it in the chat so we make sure we don't miss you.
I think go ahead,
ahead.
Sheila. No, you go ahead.
I just we really are like best friends, North and South coming together.
You're first.
Okay. Yeah. I just think it's really important to, however you grasp people's attention and have them learn about classical dance, whether it's through Bollywood, through Tollywood, however their path is to get there, I just think it's important to preserve the genuine classical dance forms that really back, as we talked about, back Bollywood and Tollywood and everything that brings our culture together. And then to Nirthi's point about just, South and North, it doesn't, it's classical dance, it's an art form, and it's historical, it's so old and ancient, and it's beautiful, and we want to keep that as much as possible, whether it's to instrumental or live, however we want it. I think that's very important. I think movies like this and the modern day ones are helping to bring that to light. So I'm very supportive of that. Nirthi.
I think watching a movie like this after a long time was very helpful. I think Indian cinema began with classical dance. From the Telugu movie industry, we had tons of classical dancers and singers, and everything was about gods and goddesses and all the stories. And I don't like the word mythology. We need another word. I don't say Hindu mythology. Hindu stories, whatever you want to call them. The sets were so beautiful. And most of what I learned and why I learned it was because of the Telugu movie industry. I learned a lot about Hinduism and morals, and I don't know how moralistic the actual industry was, but that's what I was raised on. And I feel like Bollywood is turning back to that. When you saw a song like Garmore Pardesia, you did see a lot of interest jump back. And we saw it in our students, and they were coming back. So I think cinema should continue to bring movies like this forward, and organizations like IDEA should encourage us to watch it. It was great to just watch that acting today. I was like, wow, they're so good. And I loved Gopi G's background story and his hard work to get to that set or whatever. Thanks for telling us that. I just we're really happy to be here. Thank you, Madhavi. Thank you, Manisha ji. You're such a pleasure.
This was incredibly informative, learning from everyone about their experiences, and especially the background from Manisha ji, which we would have never probably gotten exposed to. So I think that we're so fortunate to have that. Thank you, everyone.
Did I tell you one more thing? When Jhanak Payal Baaje was released again, after I starting recently, I mean in 64, after 64, Gopi ji had taken entire class to watch that movie. It was released in some time, I don't remember, but after 64, and all of us were at Bharat Mata in Mumbai, and Gopi ji was like, telling every girl, watch this, और जब ये हुआ था, ये चल रहा था, तब ऐसे से हुआ था, तब ऐसे से हुआ था. And we were watching it for the first time, and Gopi ji was telling us, and listening to him and watching to the movie, it was fun. And everyone in the theater was like, oh, Gopi Krishna is here with us, and they were also listening what Gopi ji used to was telling. It was so enjoyable. Sorry, I remember it right now, so I just added it. But yes, Madhavi.
Incredible background. Again, our audience would never really get a chance to hear these stories if not for you.
True.
Really thankful. I know for me personally, the research that I do deals with Indian and Indian diasporic identity and representation in entertainment media and in art and politics. The sort of focus of the research that I do is on the ways in which media and art influence society. Specifically, we were talking about stereotypes earlier, which is applicable to this conversation as well as American entertainment media. So a lot of the takeaways, I think, from this talk, I am excited to use in my research. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Madhavi. Thank you, Sheila, Nirati. It was so nice being with you.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
So fun.
Yes.
Namaste, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, IDEA, once again. It was very enjoyable.
Yes. Very well put together.
True.
Yeah, and I want to plug everyone, please keep an eye out on the ideadancers.org website for updates about the festival, where you can get tickets to the shows coming up. It's going to be an incredible festival. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Bye.
Bye. Good night, everyone. Or good morning to you, Manisha ji.
Oh, yes. Thank you. It is 8 o'clock in the morning.
Try and shot now for you. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, good night for all of you.
Bye.
Yes.